She was left alone on a date until a mysterious billionaire said he's going to regret losing you.
The alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning, and Adrianna Beckett already knows the day will be long before she even opens her eyes. Dawn hasn't broken over Orlando yet, but she's already on her feet, bare soles touching the cold floor of the small apartment she shares with her mother. There's no time to hesitate. Coffee is quick, almost automatic. 2 spoonfuls of sugar, a sip burning down her throat, and the cup forgotten in the sink as she pulls her hair back into a tight bun. The bathroom mirror reflects a young woman, but with eyes that carry the exhaustion of someone living 2 lives, her own and the one she supports. She forces a smile, just to test if she still can. She can, but the smile doesn't reach her eyes. The hospital greets her with the familiar smell of disinfectant and the constant sound of heart monitors echoing through white corridors. Adrianna puts on her scrubs like someone donning armor. Here, she isn't just an indebted daughter or a lonely woman. She's the nurse everyone seeks out when pain tightens its grip, when fear paralyzes, when hope seems too far away. Her nimble fingers adjust IVs, check vital signs, hold the trembling hands of patients who need to feel that someone cares. And she does care, deeply, even when her own strength is at its limit, even when her mother's hospital bill arrives with numbers that make her stomach turn. She smiles at each patient, whispers words of comfort, and keeps to herself the weight she carries on her shoulders. Double shifts have become routine, not choice. Between shift changes, Adrianna sits in the break room with a cup of coffee growing cold between her hands. The coffee is never drunk while it's hot. There's always an emergency, always someone needing her before she can need herself. She watches the silver ring she absently spins between her fingers, an heirloom from her grandmother, the only luxury she allows herself to wear. It's an unconscious gesture, almost meditative, that calms her when anxiety tightens in her chest. Her coworkers admire her dedication, but no one asks the price of such devotion. No one sees the bills piled on the living room table, the expensive medications, the nights when she counts and recounts money that's never enough. There's a contradiction Adrianna carries like a poorly kept secret. She takes care of everyone, but is terrified of needing to be cared for. The idea of depending on someone, of showing weakness, of accepting help, frightens her more than any night shift or medical emergency. She learned early that she can only count on herself. Her father left when she was 12, leaving behind only silence and debt. Since then, being strong stopped being an option and became the only possibility. But at night, when the city finally falls silent and she collapses exhausted onto her narrow bed, a question insists on whispering in the darkness. How much longer can she keep this fortress standing? How much longer can she pretend she's not crumbling inside?
Her mother notices more than Adrianna realizes. Sitting in the living room armchair, a blanket over her weak legs, she watches her daughter come home late at night, eyes red with exhaustion, and feels guilt squeeze her heart. "You need to live, my daughter," she says, in the soft but firm voice she's always used to teach important lessons. Adrianna just shakes her head, kisses her mother's forehead, and murmurs that everything's fine, that she's taking care of everything. But Ophelia knows that taking care of everything means sacrificing everything. Dreams, desires, the youth that should be blooming, not withering between shifts and worries. She wants to shout that her daughter deserves more, deserves love, deserves rest. But the words get stuck in her throat, just like the air that sometimes fails to come. The routine continues relentlessly, a loop of exhaustion and duty. Adrianna wakes, works, cares, smiles, endures. Weeks blur together, days lose their color, and she begins to feel like she's living in black and white while the world around her pulses in vibrant hues. There are fleeting moments of beauty, a patient who improves, a sunrise seen from the hospital window, her mother's genuine laughter during dinner. But these moments seem increasingly rare, like stars that shine less as the night grows denser. She wants to believe there's something more waiting for her, that life isn't just about surviving, but hope, that fragile and stubborn thing, has become difficult to hold on to. And then, on a particularly quiet night, after a shift that seemed endless, Adrianna does something she never imagined doing. Sitting on the apartment balcony, her phone illuminating her tired face, she hesitates for long minutes before finally giving in. Her fingers tremble slightly as she creates a profile on a dating app. Something simple, without great expectations, just an almost desperate attempt to remember she's still a woman with desires, with dreams, and the right to be more than just a caregiver. She chooses an old photo, from when her smile still shone naturally in her eyes, writes a few lines about herself, and hesitates again before hitting confirm. Her heart races, mixing fear with the smallest spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, something good can come from this small act of courage.
The message arrives 3 days later, and Adrianna reads and rereads the words on the screen as if she needs to make sure they're real. "How about we meet up? I know a quiet place." His profile seemed promising. Friendly smile, a few humorous lines, nothing too elaborate, but honest enough to spark her curiosity. She responds with a yes that takes minutes to type, each letter weighing like an important decision. They agree on Friday night at a simple restaurant in the working-class neighborhood far from bustling downtown Orlando. It's the kind of place she can afford if she needs to split the bill, the kind of place where she can just be Adrianna without having to pretend to be someone she's not. When she confirms the time, 7 in the evening, she feels something she hasn't felt in so long she almost forgot its name: anticipation. On Friday, the shift seems longer than ever. Adrianna looks at the clock on the hospital wall more times than she should, the hands dragging with cruel slowness. At 5:30, she finally rushes out, her heart beating to a different rhythm, lighter, almost youthful. At home, she takes a quick shower, chooses a simple but pretty dress, navy blue, the only one that doesn't carry stains of exhaustion, and puts on a little lipstick. Ophelia watches from her armchair with a smile that mixes joy and relief. "You look beautiful, my daughter," she says, and there are tears held back in her eyes because it's been so long since she's seen her daughter dress up for anything other than work. Adrianna kisses her mother's forehead, feels the tightness in her chest that always comes when she thinks about leaving her alone, but moves forward. Today, she needs to try. The restaurant is cozy, with soft yellow lights and the aroma of spices floating in the air. Adrianna arrives promptly at 7, chooses a table near the window, and sits with her hands clasped on her lap, trying to control her nerves. Her phone is beside the empty plate, the screen lighting up with each notification, but none are from him. 7:15. She orders a glass of water, smiles at the waiter who watches her sympathetically. 7:30. Another sip of water, the ice melting slowly as she checks her phone for the 10th time. Maybe he's stuck in traffic. Maybe something came up. She tries to believe the excuses she creates in her own mind, but an uncomfortable feeling begins to settle in her stomach. Hope, so fragile, begins to crack. 8 o'clock. The waiter returns, embarrassed, asking if she'd like to order something. Adrianna shakes her head, murmurs that she's still waiting for someone, but her voice comes out shaky, betraying her attempt to seem calm. The tables around her begin to fill with couples, groups of friends, people who laugh loudly and toast to happy moments. She's alone, surrounded by life that doesn't include her. Her eyes burn, but she won't cry. Not here, not now. She's never allowed the world to see her break, and today won't be any different. 8:30. A message finally arrives, but it's not from him. It's a notification from the bank, reminding her of a bill's due date. The irony is so bitter she almost laughs. Almost.
Across the room, someone is watching.
Adam Coleman had been there before she arrived, taking refuge in a discreet corner after escaping a suffocating corporate dinner full of fake smiles and empty conversations. He wanted just a simple place, honest food, silence. But then she walked in. Navy blue dress, hesitant steps, a nervous smile for the waiter, and he couldn't look away. He saw when she sat down, fixed her hair, checked her phone. He saw the hope on her face. And now, more than an hour later, he sees the silent disillusionment settle in like a shadow. Adam doesn't know this woman, but something in him rebels against the injustice of that moment. Who would be foolish enough to leave her waiting? 9 o'clock. Adrianna takes a deep breath, puts her phone in her purse, and stands, trying to maintain her dignity as she walks toward the exit. The waiters avoid her gaze, and she feels the weight of humiliation burning her cheeks. Her hands tremble when she reaches the door, and she needs a moment to compose herself before stepping out into the warm Orlando night. The street is illuminated by yellowed streetlights, the distant sound of passing cars, and she feels small, ridiculous for having believed she could have something good. The pride that has always kept her standing now hurts like an open wound. She should have known better. She should have stayed in the safety of her routine, where at least disappointment is predictable. He's going to regret losing you. The voice is deep, firm, and comes from behind her. Adrianna turns, surprised, and finds a tall man with light eyes and a serious but kind expression. He's standing in the restaurant doorway, hands in his pockets, as if he's not sure he should have spoken, but couldn't stay silent. "Sorry, I saw you waiting," he continues, and there's something genuine in his voice, something that cuts through the armor she's erected. And any idiot who leaves you waiting like that doesn't deserve a second of your time. Adrianna freezes, not knowing what to say, her heart beating irregularly. Who is this stranger? Why does he care? And why, for the first time in hours, does she feel that maybe the night hasn't been a complete waste?
Adrianna should have left. She should have thanked him politely and disappeared into the night, taking with her what remained of her dignity. But there's something in that stranger's gaze, a raw sincerity, unfiltered, that makes her hesitate. "I don't need pity," she responds, her voice firmer than her racing heart suggests. He shakes his head immediately, taking a step forward, but maintaining a respectful distance. "It's not pity, it's indignation," he says, and a half-smile touches his lips. "I was in there, trying to escape a dinner where everyone pretends to be interesting, and I saw a genuinely interesting woman being left behind. That irritated me." She blinks, processing the words. There's honesty there, but also a vulnerability that doesn't match the impeccable suit he's wearing. Something about him seems tired, just like her. "Have you eaten?" he asks, and the tone is casual, almost carefree, as if the answer doesn't matter as much as the attempt to offer something better than what this night has been. Adrianna looks back at the restaurant where she spent over an hour being invisible, then returns her eyes to him. She should say no. She should protect herself from the possibility of another disappointment, but there's an exhaustion greater than fear. The exhaustion of always being alone, always being the strong one, always closing doors before anyone can enter. "No," she admits quietly, and it's as if that simple word carries much more than the answer to a question. He smiles, and this time the smile reaches his eyes. "Then let me fix this night. I promise not to be another idiot." They go back inside, but this time the atmosphere is completely different. Adam, that's how he introduces himself, just Adam, no last names or titles, requests the same table where she was sitting, and when the waiter brings the menus, he orders 2 coffees before anything else. Coffee before dinner?
Adrianna asks, one eyebrow raised, and he shrugs. You seem like someone who lives on coffee, right, guess? She can't help but laugh. Small but genuine, the first of the night. Completely right. There's something disarming about this simplicity, this direct way of speaking that dispenses with formalities. As they browse the menus, she observes him from the corners of her eyes, hair slightly tousled, as if he's run his fingers through it several times, tie loosened, shoulders relaxed in a way that doesn't seem rehearsed. He's not trying to impress. He's just present. The conversation starts slowly, like two strangers testing the ground, but soon gains momentum. Adam asks about her, and Adrianna surprises herself by answering honestly. She talks about the hospital, about shifts that stretch until her body screams for rest, about the strange satisfaction of holding the hand of someone who's afraid and feeling that in that moment, she's all they have. He truly listens, doesn't just wait for his turn to speak, and there are questions that show he's absorbing every word. And do you take care of yourself too, or just others? He asks at one point, and the question catches Adrianna off guard. She opens her mouth to respond, but the words don't come. The truth is, she doesn't take care of herself. She doesn't have time, doesn't have energy, doesn't have internal permission for it. It's complicated, she finally murmurs, and he accepts the answer without pressing. But his gaze says he understood much more than she spoke.
When it's his turn to talk, Adam surprises her with his vulnerability. He tells her about a life that, seen from the outside, seems perfect. Success, stability, doors that open before he even needs to knock. But inside, he confesses, it's an emptiness that no achievement fills. People know me for what I've built, not for who I am. And sometimes I wonder if I even know who I am anymore, he says, his gaze lost in the coffee cup cooling between his hands. Adrianna recognizes that loneliness. It's different from hers, but carries the same weight. The loneliness of someone surrounded by expectations and obligations, but feels that no one really sees beyond the surface. I understand, she responds quietly. Sometimes we get lost trying to be what everyone needs. He raises his eyes and looks at her, and there's recognition there, a silent connection that requires no explanation. The hours slip by without them noticing. The restaurant begins to empty. Waiters clean tables around them, and still they remain there, talking like old friends reuniting after years apart. They talk about books. He mentions he reads biographies of ordinary people who did extraordinary things. She confesses to loving old romances where love is complicated but true. They talk about abandoned dreams. He wanted to be an architect and create spaces that made people feel at home. She wanted to travel and discover places where life is slower, gentler. They laugh at life's small ironies, share comfortable silences, and there's a moment when their eyes meet and both feel that something is changing. Something delicate and dangerous is being born between them. The chemistry isn't explosive, but it's deep, like roots that grow slowly but firmly. When they finally leave the restaurant, it's already the early hours. The city sleeps, and the night air brings a coolness that contrasts with the day's heat. They walk to her car in silence, but it's a silence full of unspoken things, of possibilities suspended in the air. "Thank you," Adrianna says when they arrive, and the word carries much more than gratitude for a dinner. It carries the relief of having been seen, of having been heard, of having had a night where she didn't need to be strong all the time. Adam smiles, that smile that transforms his serious face into something almost young. "Thank you. It's been a while since I had a real conversation." She gets in the car, starts the engine, but before leaving, she looks in the rearview mirror and sees him still there, standing under the yellowed light of the street lamp, hands in his pockets. And for the first time in a long while, Adrianna drives home feeling that maybe, just maybe, the world still holds good surprises for her.
Adrianna didn't expect to see him again. That night at the restaurant had been too good to be real. The kind of encounter you store in memory as an isolated moment of beauty amid chaos. But 3 days later, during her afternoon shift, she is adjusting an elderly patient's IV when she hears a familiar voice coming from the hallway. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Nurse Adrianna Beckett." She freezes, her heart racing before she even turns around. And there he is, Adam, standing at the entrance to the nurse's station, holding 2 cups of coffee as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Their eyes meet, and he smiles, somewhat sheepish, as if he's also not sure whether he should be there. "You said you lived on coffee, so I thought I'd bring reinforcements." Maya, her colleague, looks from one to the other with raised eyebrows, a mischievous smile forming on her lips. Adrianna feels her cheeks warm. She meets him in the break room minutes later when she manages a quick pause between one patient and another. Adam hands her one of the cups and she accepts, their fingers brushing for a second that feels longer than it is. "You didn't need to come all the way here," she says, but there's no complaint in her voice. There's something softer, almost shy. He shrugs, looking around the small room with tired walls and a coffee machine that barely works. "I wanted to see where you spend most of your days. And I also wanted to see you again." His honesty continues to be unsettling. Most people hide intentions behind careful words, but Adam speaks like someone who has no time or patience for games. Adrianna doesn't know if this frightens her or relieves her. Maybe both. They talk for 15 minutes until the alarm in one of the rooms goes off and she needs to run, but before leaving, she turns and says, "Come back tomorrow?" And he does. Not just the next day, but the day after that and the day after that. Adam starts appearing at the hospital with a regularity that defies coincidence, always bringing coffee, sometimes a sandwich when he notices she hasn't had time to eat. He doesn't interfere with her work. On the contrary, he learns to read the signs of when she's too busy and just waves from afar or waits patiently in the break room until she has a few minutes. Gradually, he begins to know her routine, the patients she worries about most, the small victories and silent losses that mark each shift. He hears stories about the lady in room 207 who calls Adrianna "my daughter," and the teenager in 312 who's fighting an illness no one his age should face. And when she speaks, her eyes shining with that mixture of compassion and exhaustion, Adam understands why she does what she does. It's not just a job, it's a calling. Ophelia notices the change in her daughter before Adrianna even admits it to herself. There's a different sparkle in her eyes, a lightness in shoulders that were always tense. When Adrianna casually mentions that a friend has been showing up at the hospital, Ophelia just smiles and doesn't ask questions. But the smile says everything. "He seems like a good person," Adrianna comments one evening while helping her mother take her medication. "He really does," Ophelia responds, her voice soft but laden with hope. "And you deserve someone good, my daughter." Adrianna looks away because accepting that she deserves something good is still difficult, still seems like too much luxury for someone who learned to live with the minimum. But for the first time, she begins to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she can allow herself to believe it.
Adam and Adrianna develop a quiet intimacy, built on conversations stolen between shifts and glances that say more than words. He begins to understand how the hospital works, learns the names of her colleagues, observes how she interacts with each patient, always present, always attentive, always giving more than she should. One afternoon, he finds her sitting on a bench in the hospital's outdoor garden, her face in her hands, and immediately realizes something is wrong. He sits beside her without saying anything, just offering his presence. "We lost a patient today," she finally murmurs, her voice choked. "An 8-year-old girl. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough." Tears begin to fall, and Adam does the only thing he knows to do. He pulls her into a hug, holding her while she cries against his shoulder. There are no words that can fix this, so he doesn't try. He just stays. It's Maya who plants the first seed of doubt. One afternoon, she pulls Adrianna aside and asks directly, "You know who he is, right?" Adrianna frowns, confused. "Adam? You know what he does." The truth is, Adrianna doesn't know much. He always deflects when the subject is work, and she's never pressed because she understands the value of having something in life that isn't defined by titles or professions.
He works in business? I don't know, she responds uncertainly. Maya takes out her phone and, after a few taps on the screen, turns it to show a photo. It's Adam, but not the Adam she knows. It's a polished, distant version, alongside skyscrapers and headlines about multi-million-dollar developments. Adam Coleman, one of the most influential real estate moguls in Florida. He's not just someone with a good job, Adrianna. He's rich, very rich. The world seems to tilt slightly, and Adrianna needs to lean against the wall. Everything starts to make sense. The impeccable suit, the way he talks about creating spaces, how he seems so out of place and yet so comfortable in any environment. He never lied, but he also never told the complete truth. When Adam shows up at the hospital the next day, Adrianna is different. He notices immediately the way she avoids his gaze, how she accepts the coffee but doesn't smile, how there's a new distance between them that didn't exist yesterday. "What's wrong?" he asks, concern clear in his voice. She takes a deep breath and finally faces him. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" There's hurt there, but also something deeper, fear. Adam closes his eyes for a second, and when he opens them again, there's a sadness she's never seen before. "Because when I'm just Adam, without the titles, without the money, people see me for real. And you saw me. For the first time in years, someone looked at me and saw who I am, not what I have." Adrianna wants to believe him. Every fiber of her being wants to believe, but the inequality between them now seems like an impossible chasm to cross. "I can't be another one of your projects, Adam, another person you help because you can. I'm not charity." The words come out hard, but her voice trembles. He takes a step forward, but she steps back. "You were never charity, Adrianna. Never." But she can't hear it. Not now. Not with the weight of reality crushing the fantasy she allowed herself to build. He leaves the hospital that day and for the first time in weeks doesn't return the next. Adrianna feels the absence like an open wound but convinces herself it's better this way. Different worlds, different lives. It was inevitable that it would end. But at night, alone in the apartment, she picks up her phone and looks at his number, her fingers hovering over the screen without the courage to call. And somewhere in the city, Adam is sitting in an empty high-rise office looking at the same city she is, thinking about the same woman, and making a decision that will change everything.
2 weeks pass in heavy silence, and Adrianna tries to convince herself she's fine. She returns to the usual routine, double shifts, cold coffees, sleepless nights, but something has changed. The hospital seems grayer, the hallways emptier, and she catches herself looking toward the entrance of the nurses' station, waiting for someone who won't come. Maya notices, but doesn't comment. Ophelia notices and comments gently, "The heart knows when it makes a mistake, my daughter." Adrianna just shakes her head and changes the subject. She did the right thing, she repeats to herself like a mantra, protected herself, maintained her dignity. But at night, when the city falls silent and she's alone with her thoughts, the question insists on returning. What if she's wrong? What if she threw away something real out of fear it wasn't real enough? In the 3rd week, something unusual happens. Adrianna is organizing medications when one of the coordinators approaches with a curious expression. "We have a new volunteer starting today. He specifically asked to work on our floor." She doesn't think much of it until lunchtime, when she enters the break room and freezes in the doorway. Adam is there, wearing not the impeccable suit, but simple clothes, jeans, white t-shirt, a volunteer badge hanging from his neck. He's helping organize supplies, chatting naturally with one of the nurses. When their eyes meet, he doesn't smile triumphantly or smugly. There's just a quiet determination in his gaze. "What are you doing here?"
Adrianna asks, her voice barely coming out. He approaches slowly, respecting her space, proving it wasn't about charity. It never was. Adam explains with that unsettling honesty that's so him that he took a temporary leave from the company. It wasn't easy. There were tense meetings, partners questioning his sanity, contracts that needed to be renegotiated. But he needed to do this, needed to show that he saw Adrianna as an equal, not as a project. I didn't come here to save you. I came because I want to be where you are. I want to learn what you know. I want to understand the world through your eyes. He speaks softly, aware they're being observed by curious colleagues. Adrianna feels her chest tighten, torn between wanting to hug him and the fear of believing again. "You didn't need to do this," she murmurs. "I know, but I wanted to." The difference between needing and wanting has never seemed so important. It's not obligation or guilt moving him, it's choice. And choice, Adrianna is beginning to understand, is the purest language of love. The following days are a cautious dance of approach. Adam works hard, without privileges or shortcuts. He cleans rooms, transports equipment, learns to change hospital bed sheets with the same dedication he'd put into a $1 million negotiation. There are comical moments. He confuses medications, gets lost in the hallways, spills coffee on his own shirt. Adrianna observes him from afar initially, guarded, but gradually the wall she erected begins to crack. Because there's nothing performative about what he's doing. He's not trying to impress her, he's just present. In the small breaks between tasks, they exchange words, then sentences, then conversations. The connection they had returns slowly, like a plant that resurfaces after winter. And this time, there's a different solidity, built not just on affinity, but on conscious choices to be there, together, despite the differences.
One night, during a particularly difficult shift, they lose a patient. It's a middle-aged man, father of 3, who fought bravely, but whose body finally gave out. Adrianna is used to losses. They're part of the profession, but it never gets easier. She leaves the room with tears in her eyes, removes her gloves with trembling hands, and finds Adam waiting in the hallway. He doesn't say anything, doesn't try to fix or minimize the pain. He just extends his hand, and she accepts it. They walk to the emergency stairwell, that quiet place where staff go when they need a moment away from the world. They sit side by side on the cold steps, and it's Adrianna who speaks first. "I told him everything would be okay. I lied." Her voice breaks. Adam squeezes her hand. "You gave him comfort in his final moments. That wasn't a lie. It was kindness." She turns to him, and there's something in his eyes, a deep understanding that only comes from someone who also knows loss, also carries invisible scars. "I was so afraid of being seen as inferior," Adrianna confesses in the dim stairwell, the words finally finding their way. "That you'd see me as someone who needs to be rescued. I spent my whole life proving I can do it alone, that I don't need anyone. And then you show up and you scare me because you make me want help, want company, want not to be alone, and that terrifies me." Adam listens, really listens before responding. "Accepting love doesn't make you weak, Adrianna, it makes you human. I also spent years pretending I didn't need anything or anyone. But the truth? I was dying of loneliness. You reminded me that being alive is more than just functioning. It's feeling. It's connecting. It's allowing someone to matter." He hesitates, then continues. "I don't want to save you. I want to walk beside you. There's a difference." Their faces are close now, and there's a tension in the air that isn't uncomfortable. It's charged with possibility, with shared vulnerability. Adam raises his free hand and gently brushes a strand of hair from Adrianna's face, his fingers grazing her cheek. "I fell in love with you," he says, without evasion, without embellishment, just raw truth. "With the way you care for people, with the strength you carry without realizing it, with the way you smile even when you're exhausted. For everything you are, not despite the difficulties, but including them." Adrianna feels tears streaming down, but this time they're not from sadness, they're from relief, from recognition, from something she didn't even know she was waiting to hear. "Me too. I fell in love with you too." And when their lips finally meet, it's as if all the misplaced pieces of the universe find their places, gentle, honest, full of promise. But life, as always, has perfect timing for complications. 2 days after that kiss in the stairwell, Ophelia faints at home. The ambulance arrives quickly, but the diagnosis is serious. The disease has progressed, previous treatments weren't enough, and now there's need for expensive surgery and medications that make numbers dance in frightening amounts in Adrianna's head. She's at the hospital where she works, but this time on the other side, as family, not as professional. Adam finds her in the waiting room, her face pale, eyes fixed on the floor. He sits beside her, doesn't need to ask what happened, because he already knows. "How much?" he asks directly. Adrianna shakes her head. "No." The word comes out firm, but there's desperation hidden there. "Adrianna, let me help." "No, Adam, I can't. I won't use you like that. It's not fair. It's not what? Love? Because that's exactly what love does. It shows up in the hard times." But she stands, moves away from him, arms crossed in a defensive position. "If you love me, respect what I'm asking. I need to do this my way." And for the first time, Adam understands there are boundaries he can't cross without breaking the very thing he's trying to protect. So he backs away, heartbroken, and watches her leave alone to face a battle she insists on fighting without reinforcements. The silence that settles between them is more painful than any goodbye.
The following weeks are the hardest Adrianna has ever faced. Ophelia is hospitalized, treatments advance slowly, and bills pile up in stacks that seem like insurmountable mountains. Adrianna works triple shifts when she can, sleeps in uncomfortable chairs beside her mother's bed, and survives on coffee and pure determination. Her colleagues offer help, but she refuses with firm politeness. Adam tries to call, sends messages that go unanswered, and eventually stops trying, not out of giving up, but out of respect. The distance between them grows like a silent abyss, and Adrianna convinces herself it's better this way. She's always known how to face things alone. It's always been this way. But at night, when she holds her mother's fragile hand and hears the irregular breathing, she feels a loneliness so deep it physically hurts. And she wonders if real strength is enduring everything alone, or if it's having the courage to accept that she doesn't have to. Ophelia, even weak, notices everything. She watches her daughter with that look only mothers have, the look that sees through masks, that sees beyond unspoken words. One afternoon, when Adrianna is adjusting the pillows, Ophelia grabs her wrist with surprising strength. "Sit here with me," she asks, her voice hoarse but firm. Adrianna obeys, and Ophelia wastes no time beating around the bush. "You pushed him away, didn't you?" Adrianna looks away, but can't lie to her mother. "I couldn't accept his money, Mom. You don't understand. It would be what? Love? Because that's what people who love each other do, my daughter. They support each other, share the burdens." Adrianna feels tears beginning to burn. "But what if he's only with me out of pity? What if I'm just another problem he solves because he can?" Ophelia shakes her head slowly. "That man gave up his life to work in a hospital as a volunteer. That's not pity, Adrianna. That's devotion." "I raised you to be strong," Ophelia continues, and there's a painful tenderness in her voice. "But I never wanted you to confuse strength with loneliness. Being strong isn't refusing help when you need it. It's having the courage to be vulnerable. It's letting someone see you at your worst moments and trusting they'll stay." She squeezes her daughter's hand, her eyes shining with held-back tears. "I'm sick, yes, but you know what hurts me more than that? Watching you punish yourself, denying your own happiness because of a pride that will leave you alone and bitter. The words fall like stones in water, creating expanding ripples. Adrianna sobs, finally allowing the armor to crack. "I'm so afraid, Mom, afraid of not being enough, afraid that if I let him in for real, he'll realize I'm not worth all this." Ophelia pulls her daughter into a fragile but love-filled embrace. "You've always been enough, my girl. Always." Something changes in that hospital room. Adrianna leaves with red eyes, but with something new being born in her chest. Not hope yet, but the possibility of it. She picks up her phone and looks at Adam's messages, dozens of them, each one carrying concern and affection without demanding a response. The last one simply says, "I'm here. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." Her fingers hover over the keyboard, but she still can't type. She needs to resolve something first. She needs to understand that accepting love doesn't diminish her, it completes her. And that there's a difference between charity and genuine care. One comes from top to bottom, the other from equal to equal. Adam never looked down at her. He's always been beside her, trying to reach the same horizon.
2 weeks later, there's a decisive moment. Ophelia is finally discharged. The treatments worked better than expected, and although the road ahead is still long, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Adrianna is organizing her mother's belongings when a nurse enters with an envelope. "This was at reception for you," she says with a curious smile. Adrianna opens it with trembling hands and finds a letter, handwritten in firm, clear script. It's from Adam. He doesn't talk about money or help. He talks about her mother's last day of treatment, about how he wishes he could be there, not as a savior, not as a solution, but simply as someone who cares. "You don't need to let me fix everything, Adrianna. Just let me be present. Let me hold your hand while you're being brave. Let me be part of your life, not because you need it, but because we both want it." The letter ends with an address, the same restaurant where it all began. Adrianna looks at her mother, who observes everything with a wise smile. "Go," Ophelia says simply. "I'll be fine, and so will you, but only if you stop fighting against the one thing that can make you happy." Adrianna kisses her mother's forehead, grabs her purse, and almost runs out of the hospital, her heart beating so hard she feels it in her temples. The city is golden with the evening light, that magical hour where everything seems possible. She drives to the restaurant, hands sweaty on the steering wheel, mentally rehearsing what she'll say, but knowing the right words will only come when she sees him. When she parks and looks through the window, there he is, sitting at the same table where he waited for her that first disastrous night that somehow crooked and beautiful changed everything. Adam stands when he sees her enter. There's nervousness in the way he runs his hair through his hair, in how his shoulders are tense. He wasn't sure if she would come. Adrianna walks to him with firm steps, and when they're finally face to face, she doesn't let fear win. "I was wrong," she says, her voice trembling but determined. "Wrong to think that accepting your love made me weak. Wrong to confuse pride with independence. Wrong to push away the very person who always saw me as an equal." She takes a deep breath. "You didn't save me that night, Adam. You just saw me. And I need you to know that I see you too. Not the mogul, not the money, not the titles. I see the man who worked as a volunteer just to prove a point. The man who held my hand when I lost a patient. The man who makes me want to be vulnerable because I trust him." Tears flow freely now. "I love you, and I'm ready to let you love me back." Adam doesn't hesitate. He pulls her into a hug that seems to seal all wounds, all doubts, all the nights of loneliness they both carried for too long. "You've always been my equal, Adrianna, always," he whispers against her hair. They stay like this for long moments, while the restaurant around them continues its life. Waiters who smile discreetly, couples dining, the soft clinking of silverware and glasses. It's the same place where she was stood up, where he defended her, where it all began so improbably. But now, it's not about chance. It's about choice.
the choice to be together not because they need to, but because life is simply better when shared. They sit down, order coffee before anything else, and laugh that light laugh of those who have finally found their place in the world. And for the first time in a long while, both Adrianna and Adam feel that love, true, honest, imperfect, isn't a fairy tale. It's something better. It's real.
Just as Adrianna discovered that accepting love is not a sign of weakness but of courage, each of us also carries this possibility of transformation within ourselves. Her story reminds us that sometimes we build walls so high around our hearts that we forget to leave doors open for those who truly deserve to enter. True love doesn't diminish us, it completes us, challenges us, invites us to be vulnerable, and precisely in that vulnerability find our greatest strength. Adrianna and Adam proved that love isn't born from perfection or the absence of obstacles, but from the conscious choice to stay, to see beyond appearances, to share not only moments of joy, but also the most difficult battles. They learned that being equal doesn't mean having the same things, but valuing the same things: respect, presence, authenticity. And in this equality of purposes and feelings, they built something much more solid than any fortune could buy: a true connection. Stories like this remind us that it's never too late to start over and believe in love. Each of us, just like Adrianna, deserves to be seen, heard, and loved exactly as we are, with all the scars, all the fears, all the imperfections that make us human. The love that's worthwhile doesn't demand that we be perfect. It invites us to be real. And when we find someone willing to walk beside us, not in front of us or behind us, but side by side, we discover that chance may be the beginning, but choice is what makes love last. If this story touched you in some way, if it awakened memories, hopes, or reflections about your own journey, share in the comments. Love transforms lives. We want to know how this journey of Adrianna and Adam resonated in your heart, what lessons you're taking with you, and which stories from your own path connect with this narrative of courage and devotion. Subscribe to Eternal Romance Stories and experience with each episode emotions that warm the soul and reflections that transform the heart. Here, each story is an invitation to believe that true love exists, that it appears when we least expect it, and that it's worth having the courage to open your heart even when fear insists on closing it. Join us on this journey where each narrative is a reminder that love, in all its forms, is the most powerful force that exists. And this was just one of the many stories that will still move you here. In upcoming episodes, we'll meet other courageous hearts, other love journeys that defy the impossible, other proof that when feeling is true, it always finds a way. Stay with us because the best is yet to come.